not God speaking, it's Solomon speaking. Some groups, some what I would call semi-Christian groups, and I don't mean to pick on anybody, but the Jehovah's Witnesses, for one, base a lot of their, what I would call questionable doctrines, things that don't agree with New Testament theology. They base it on the book of Ecclesiastes. And I'm not recommending that you get into discussions and arguments with the people that come to the door, because frankly, my advice to you is, having done it, is that they don't want to hear anything you've got to say. And I've never had much success in talking a Jehovah's Witness out of their point of view. But I have found out a lot about what they think from having these, for me, profitless. Speaking of Solomon here, I'll tell you something that's profitless, having those kind of discussions. But what I found out is a lot of their theology and a lot of their thinking is based on Ecclesiastes. But see, the Ecclesiastes is not telling you God's wisdom, it's telling you, he says it in verse 1, these are the words of the preacher. Now, look at chapter 2. This is where I really wanted to talk to you about. Notice chapter 1, the tone of it is vanity of vanities, everything's empty. Chapter 2, he begins to tell you about his experience. And I just want you to notice a few. I'm going to read about 10 or 11 verses. I just want you to notice, here's what I want you to notice. Please observe how often the word I, the pronoun I, speaking of himself, and me, I and me. Notice how often I and me come up in chapter 2. I said in mine heart, go to now, and I will prove thee with mirth. Therefore, enjoy pleasure, and behold, this also is vanity. So he said, I'm going to try out mirth and laughter and give my heart to that, and I found out that's vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of mirth, what doeth it? I sought in mine heart to give myself to wine, yet acquainted mine heart with wisdom, and to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was that good for the sons of men, which they should do under heaven all the days of their life. I made me great works. I builded me houses. I planted me vineyards. Notice the word me, how often that comes up here? It almost seems like he's I and me, he's thinking about him. So not only is he looking around at the world, but he's thinking a lot about himself. Do you notice that? He's trying to satisfy himself. And it's a very self-oriented point of view. Do you notice that? He said, I tried mirth, it's vanity. I tried wine and giving myself to wine, that was vanity. I made great works. I builded houses. I planted me vineyards. Verse 5, I made me gardens and orchards. I planted trees, and in them of all kinds of fruits. I made me pools of water, to water wherewith the wood that bringeth forth trees. I got me servants and maidens, and servants born in my house. I had great possessions of great and small cattle, above all that were in Jerusalem before me. I gathered me also silver and gold, and the peculiar treasure of kings and of princes. I gat me men singers and women singers, and the delights of the sons of men, musical instruments, and that of all sorts. So I was great, and increased more than all that were before me in Jerusalem, and my wisdom remained with me. And whatsoever mine eyes desired, I kept not from them. I withheld not my heart from any joy, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my portion of all my labor. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, and all the labor that I had labored to do, and behold. Now we've read a lot of things here. Did you notice all those different things he did? And I got it all to myself, and then I looked at it, and behold, it was all vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. Now, by the way, all those things he mentioned, there's nothing wrong with any of those things. There's nothing wrong with gardening. There's nothing wrong with having cattle. There's nothing wrong with having possessions. But you know what is wrong with this attitude? He is looking to all those things to satisfy him, or to make him happy, or to give him peace. You see, there's nothing wrong with anything. You know, when we were talking about things on this earth, there's nothing wrong with things. And God doesn't care if you have possessions, and if you have cattle, and if you have gardening, and if you know, all the things there's nothing wrong with any of those things. But what's wrong is, I'll tell you, there's two things wrong. First of all, Solomon was evidently looking to those things to fill a void in his life that physical things cannot fill. But notice something else about, and this is what I called your attention to, notice how self-oriented this man is. Notice the word me. How many times did me and mine and I, me, mine, I, me, mine? Did you notice that? I would like to suggest to you that that is the primary characteristic of thinking on this earth. About I, me, mine. And not only that, it's natural. It's natural. We are almost born that way. You know, when a baby is born, a baby's all about, in the baby's mind, it's all about me. I'm hungry, change me. Or I'm dirty, change me. I'm hungry, feed me. Where's my mama? Where's my blanket? You know? And that is, if I could suggest it, that is the normal, the natural way in which we, you know, when he said, don't set your mind on things on this earth are natural things, the natural world. And the mindset that we grow up with is natural because we're born with it. And Solomon here is explaining in great detail what the natural way of thinking played out to its fullest expression. This man was so rich he could give himself to trying to attain everything that his mind could settle on. Did you notice that? And at the very end of it, he said it's emptiness and it's vexation. He evidently was not happy. You know, I hear people saying all the time, when I win the lottery, then everything's going to be fine, you know. And I'm not telling you you shouldn't play the lottery, but I'm telling you this, you're probably wasting your money. That's just my guess, you know. But here, let me tell you something else. And I've read this in newspaper stories. There have been studies of people who have won the lottery in times past, and that people have studied this, and they check up on them and see what happened, let's say, a year after they win the lottery. And you know what? Most cases, they're not only are they unhappy, they're worse off a year later than they were before they ever won the lottery, for all kinds of reasons. What am I saying to you? The things in this world and natural thinking which embraces things, it's not ever going to satisfy us or make us happy. That's not where the source of happiness is. Now, Paul said, don't set your mind on things in this earth. And I was suggesting to you, don't set your mind, don't let your mind be set in a natural way. Now, we naturally think the way Solomon is thinking here, I, me, mine. Did you know that is, it doesn't take any effort to think that way. You know, nobody has to say to the baby, I want to teach you today how to be self-oriented. It's natural for the baby to be that way, right? But we have to choose anything other than that. We have to and we can choose. That's why Paul says, set your mind. Now, as an example of a higher kind of thinking, I think Jesus is the best example. And here's a passage I like. And again, there's lots of choices we could make, but I'm just choosing ones that seem like the easiest to see. Luke's Gospel, chapter 6. Jesus said, I came down from heaven, not to do my own will, but the will of Him that sent me. And Jesus, having come down from heaven, introduces us to a heavenly kind of thinking. And I just want to jump into the middle of this message in chapter 6 and verse 31 and see if I can make a contrast to the way Solomon was talking with his I, me, mine, to a totally different kind of thinking, a higher form of thinking that Jesus introduces us to. Verse 31, I'm jumping in the middle of this. I could back up a little bit perhaps, but I just want to jump to the main thought where he sums it up. Think about this verse. And as ye would that men should do to you, do ye also to them likewise. Now, we've heard this before. This is called the golden rule. And sometimes these things that are so familiar to us, it's easy to just sort of let it pass without considering the depth of what it is that he's saying here. As you would that men should do to you, do ye also to them likewise. Now, we could look at it in a very kind of a wooden, legalistic way and just try to strictly think, well, what do I want somebody to do for me, and I'm going to do that for them. But you know, there's a higher principle at work here. And the higher principle at work is this heavenly thinking. And what Jesus, I'm going to suggest, this is my interpretation on it, what Jesus is suggesting, don't just think about you and everything from your perspective. Think about what everybody else or what people you're in contact with, what somebody else might need. Now, this is something that's not natural to us, that we have to choose to do it if we're going to do it. Don't just... And see, again, it's... As we grow up in life, it is really all about us, naturally. Because as we observe the world and interact with the world, we're seeing through our eyes, and it's as though it's playing on our television screen, and it's all about how does it affect me, right? Isn't that right? But what Jesus is sort of suggesting here is, think for a moment about everybody else and what's going on perhaps with somebody other than you. As you would that men should do to you, do you also likewise to them. I like what the Message says. This is a little side thought. This isn't my main thought. The Message is good with this verse. Here's a simple rule of thumb for behavior. Ask yourself, you would want people to do for you, then grab the initiative and do it for them. That's good, isn't it?